Hello. Well, it is time for week 14, book 14, which is William Gaddis uh, Agape Agape. Um, this was published after William Gaddis's death. He is a novelist who wrote only 5 novels, and most of them are very, very long. As you can see, this one is short. Um, His 2 most well-known novels are J.R. and The Recognitions, and he has another novel called A Frolic of His Own, and then he has one called Carpenter's Gothic. If I'm not mistaken, I own J.R. A Frolic of His Own and The Recognition. I believe. I'm not sure. This is the only Gaddis I have read in its entirety. I've read bits and pieces of JR and the Recognitions, but quite frankly, they're long. And I was, at the time, whenever it was I was trying to read them, I was unsuccessful. But this one, which I bought, I don't know, maybe a year, 2 years ago, I finally got a chance to get to, and I read it. Interesting book. First, style-wise, Gaddis is known for his experimental style. One of the two, J.R. I think is written almost entirely in dialogue, for instance. I think it's J.R. that is, and this one is written in essentially one long paragraph. Which isn't really a grammatically correct paragraph. And it is told, again, kind of like as dialogue, but in this case, there is no one speaking back. This is strictly a monologue. And, what is it about? Well, first of all, before I started it, I thought the title was Agape Agape. I did not realize that, if you could see right here, there is... maybe here's easier. There is a little line over the E after the first agape and the no line over the agape. Agape is a Greek word meaning unconditional love or something to that effect. And so this book deals with some concept of that agape, wide. Okay, and so in Gaddis's terms, what are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about art. And we're specifically talking about art in late capitalism, or as Walter Benjamin might say, the age of mechanical reproduction. What is art? Where is the soul of art? What is the truth of art? Now, you might notice that this has been something of an accidental theme of many of the books I've read so far. There was a sense of authenticity, of what authenticity is in Proust, for sure. And certainly the Yokima, not Yokima, what is it, the Mishima, the Mishima books that I read, those had a sense of the importance of authenticity in terms of how to live an authentic life in the book about, the book about selling his life, and Star, the book about the individual who wanted to understand was going crazy because he was a star in these movies. He wanted to understand the connection between this fictional life and his real life. Is authenticity really an issue in what's her name? What was her name? Han Kang? No. Maybe, but I don't think so. I think what's more important there is more a bare need to live. And that is a theme that will come back as well. But, so living an authentic life is important. Being authentic is important, but it's also important to find a way to live all together. And these can be conflated to the extent that, are you really living if you're not living the authentic life? And that is kind of something of the direction that Gaddis takes here. Now, this is a story of a young man not young man, an old man who theoretically is kind of on his deathbed, and he is something of an artist, and he is concerned about what the real art is. What is art for? How does art work? Particularly in a world in which art is produced for commercialism, for commercial purposes, and where there is no definitive, quote, work of art, but simply art as a product in an exchange economy. This is a big concern for Gaddis because he's very much wrapped up in, this idea of, making an authentic art. Because here's the thing. All of us will die. But the art we produce, if we produce art, will survive. These videos might survive. Gaddis's novel has survived his death, for instance. Homer survived his death. Homer's work, the Iliad and the Odyssey, survived his death long enough that we're not even sure if there is an individual known as Homer. Is it just a tradition that's been passed down? Shakespeare, same thing. Of course, most people believe there is a real Shakespeare, but there are a small number of people who critique that idea and offer some challenges to that narrative. But in any case, the work of Shakespeare has survived. In fact, these works survive to the point that you can make almost that kind of glide over the sort of elision that I made, where we take the name for the work, and so Shakespeare becomes just the work, and the man himself, the individual, disappears. And the same thing with Gaddis; he disappears in the work. Okay, and so there's a sense in which the work is more authentic than the life, and this becomes an important consideration when the work is compromised by an exchange economy, by commodification, by, what's important is not that someone has written this book, but that this book has been reproduced. And so perhaps it's taught in classrooms, perhaps it is a bestseller, perhaps it is, easily available in the remainder bin at Barnes & Noble or whatever. But in any case, how many copies of this book have been reproduced? And what does that do for the authenticity? Because after all, this physical object, the book, is not the same thing as the content. And there's a certain sense in which when we encounter the content, we enter into a strange reality, some kind of communion with the voice of the text. So the text and us, we enter into this exchange, into this communion that is, in a certain sense of the word, sacred. That's a certain sense just ours. And that is kind of the relationship that Gaddis is trying to get to and kind of looking at, is you have the artist who produces the work, but you also have the work which connects with the reader, with the individual reader. But when it's connecting with hundreds and thousands, millions and millions of readers, what happens to that connection? What happens to that work? What happens to the authenticity of what's going on? Because each reader brings something of themselves to the work. So you encounter the symbolic world that the author has written in signs and significations that are available in this culture, and you bring to it your own somewhat unique understanding of that web of signification. And that collision, that melding, that marriage, that connection, that is what reading is. And it's a very odd moment when you think about it, that I can have a communion with this, that I can see this voice that is speaking within these pages, but they're not really, this voice is speaking in my head, implanted by these random symbols on this paper. I can feel a realness and a connection and an authenticity to that work. So what does it mean for an work to be authentic? And Gaddis isn't about answering this question, at least not that I saw. It's more about just opening up that space, that question, to try to understand that there is a complexity here of what it means to write, of what it means to consume, and to create. And that is the sense in which Gaddis wants to get to. Overall, I thought this was a fascinating book. As short as it is, it probably is one that could definitely be reread. There's a sense of it that it's almost like a poem or even a semi-philosophical kind of treatise, in that perhaps every word might be important, that the difference between an and or an or might be important, that the choices of the different kinds of people he talks about here. You know, this part was for instance, it's hard to know where to begin because it's all just one big flow. But absolutely, Mr. Huizinga, Paul Valery saw it coming. Visual and auditory images brought into homes from far away, like water, gas, and electricity, and finally, God help us all, the television. Positively, Mr. Benjamin, with mechanization, advertising, artworks made directly for a market, what America's all about. Always has been, Mr. Huizinga. Always has been, Mr. Benjamin. Everything becomes an item of commerce, and market names the price, and the price becomes a criterion for everything. Absolutely, Mr. Huizinga. Authenticity is wiped out when the uniqueness of every reality is overcome by the acceptance of its reproduction. So art is designed for its reproducibility. Give them the choice, Mr. Benjamin, and the mass will always choose the fake. Choose the fake, Mr. Huizinga. Authenticity is wiped out. It's wiped out, Mr. Benjamin. Wiped out, Mr. Huizinga. Choose the fake, Mr. Benjamin. Absolutely, Mr. Huizinga. Positively, Mr. Benjamin. Wow. And then apparently he sets on a sharp pencil, and it says, good God, a way to find a sharp pencil, just sit still, avoid stress, blah, 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 and it wanders off to something else. But that is a remarkable little bit there about what I was talking about, the fake is what people want, and that is that sense of the simulacra that I believe Walter Benjamin talks about. I could be wrong. I'm not that familiar with those theories. But you get the idea that, what we want is that fake. So, I mean, you or I or anybody else can buy a print of a Van Gogh, of a Salvador Dali, of a Picasso. And, what about the authentic work? Well, we can't own the authentic work. We don't care about that. What we like is that reproducibility that we can look at in our own home, that we can hang on our own wall. That is the thing. And it's true about everything. I mean, look what happens with music. When an artist becomes too popular, they become just pop. And we all like to think, that our musical tastes are more refined, that we're above the masses, etc., blah, 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 blah. How far can that go? Some music is marginal because it's bad. Some music is marginal because it's ignored by the masses because it's perhaps good. It's a complicated equation, right? And it's that complicated equation dealing with literature that this book's about. A very good book. I'll just repeat myself at this point, but that's essentially the point of the book. Definitely worth reading. It's a short read, not difficult. A little challenging because of the sort of stream of consciousness mind flow, but nonetheless, definitely worth it.